My name is Thomas T. Huff, born and raised in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Practiced law here for 50-some years, and during my law career began to accumulate properties, urban properties downtown, and have accumulated about 14 of these properties, which I've renovated over the number of years. My wife was German, so we would always make trips to Germany and Europe during our lifetime, and so I just picked up an affinity of architectural structures and buildings in Europe. And so they're much older, and people live in cities there in Europe. And when I started the practice of law here, everybody was moving out of the cities to the suburbs, and so I just looked at some of the history here. I'm born and raised here, so some of these buildings are attractive to me, and I guess I'm the one that started the renovation of the upper floors of these units into residential units. So we've got about 80 of them now. Turned out to be a hobby to begin with, and now it's, I guess, a business. I could see that they were beginning to develop in the larger metropolitan areas urban living, and so I built the first, my first unit was above Golden Needle, 1,200 square foot unit, and I put a spiral staircase up to a roof deck, and that property had been idle on the upstairs for 80 years. The building that completed about 5 years ago was the old First National Bank building located on the corner of the mall and Michigan Avenue. It was built in 1863 by Latham Hall. That was a beautiful old historic building that was functionally obsolete, and we have 14 units that are upstairs, and they're gorgeous units with the roof deck. And so that's one that stands out because it's such a beautiful building located on the premier corner of Kalamazoo and the mall. You know, I've got a pretty good grasp of the history here of Kalamazoo. I can almost tell you the history of all of these buildings and who was involved. These old families, you know, you go through the Mountain Home Cemetery and you'll see who established this community way back when, and it's kind of fun to see how they accumulated properties here and how they did business amongst one another. And so that's of interest to me. You know, all these buildings, the businesses have all changed. You know, the banks are pretty much gone, and so, but the buildings last, and they're just now being converted into different uses. It's just things that you know, it's fun to see that total transition.
My name is Marge Kars, and I am a member of the Ladies Library Association of Kalamazoo. I'm a past president. I've been on several committees, and last year and the year before I had an opportunity to do some restoration within the building, particularly the bookcases and the shutters, which were, both of which were original to the building, but needed some, after 148 years, needed just a little bit of touch-up. Understanding what we wanted to do, which was bring them back to their original form, and especially with the shutters, because they have been on the windows since the day this building was opened in 1879, and so they've been getting all the sunlight and all of the weather, and so they're a little brittle. We decided the year before that we needed to renovate the bookcases, which essentially meant putting in new bookcases that looked exactly like the originals. The originals were simply bookcases without doors because it was housing the original collection of books for the Ladies Library Association. And at that time, those books were the original lending library of the village. So we hired Rock Bartley and Scott Spink from Rock Built to build brand new bookcases, and they did to the exact specifications of the original ones. So these bookcases, the new ones, are black ash, just like the old ones, and they now include doors with real glass, and they're all locked, so you cannot get to the books. So they took us about 6 months to get that job completed. We have about 3,000 books. And this is the original collection because one of the reasons the Ladies Library Association existed is because at that time, remember that was 19th century, women didn't have the opportunity to go past grade school. So the opportunity to go to college didn't exist. Even to go to high school didn't exist. So these women would read to each other in different clubs, like a sewing club, and then they began to gather together in larger groups, all reading the same book and then talking about it. Or they would have a lecturer come in and talk about that particular subject. So the collection includes biographies, histories, archaeology, about every topic you could think of. That's what's behind these glass doors. You know, when you look at these books, people have a tendency to say, oh, there must be very valuable books in there, and maybe that's an important thing to recognize. And there might be. We've had them evaluated, but for the most part, these are just regular books. The value of this collection is that it is what people were reading in the late 19th, early 20th century. That's the value.
My name is Mike Fleckenstein. I am the owner of Hickory Management Services, and we are involved in the business of property management and property restoration. This property is 712 South Burdick. There's a fair amount of history associated with this home. I've owned it for about 7 years, and it was in serious need of some restoration, so we undertook the project of dismantling the existing porch and rebuilding it entirely. The construction involved not just the removal of the existing porch from the brick face, but also the rebuilding of the balcony over the porch. And the balcony consisted of walls and storm windows, and when we disassembled the storm windows and the walls that were below it and above it, we discovered the original spindles and decorative material that was with the house probably originally. And from that, we were able to reconstruct the spindles that were probably part of the main porch to bring it back to its original character. Discovering the spindles was a complete surprise. We had no idea originally what we were going to do about spindle design until we uncovered those that were up on the balcony. We wanted to replicate what was here and not just replicate what we saw, but to try to bring back the character that existed decades ago when it was built, and at the same time create a stable structure that had proper footings, didn't pull away from the building because of the absence of footings.
Hello, my name is Tim Ricks. My company is Ricks Construction, and we worked on this project. This house was built in 1895, and this porch was in pretty rough shape when we started. You could look up and see the sky because the building was actually pulling apart from the house, and we took this all apart. The poles down with the foundation down into the ground in a little bit different location than it was, and then we built the framing, and then I set these poles where they are because since we took all of this down, we had to put it back in exactly the same spot that it was because it wouldn't fit. You know, you couldn't just reposition all of this ornate trim, so we had to get it in the exact right spot, and then we framed everything around it and put it back together that way. With these handrails, what I made most of it. I took this out of cedar and formed those. These spindles are spindles that we had remade, or we had them made to duplicate what we found upstairs. The newel posts out in front I actually just made at home, turned those on a lathe and tried to make it look like what we have. It's close, it's not exact, but it's fairly close. With help from builder Brad Van Linder and Matt Raderink, those guys helped me put this together and do the ceiling. And this is how it turned out.
My name is Lisa. I'm with Evelyn Smith Painting. It's probably one of the largest projects I've ever done and one of the most intricate. I chose the colors. My inspiration were the painted ladies of San Francisco. The most difficult work was the 40-foot ladder work, obviously, and going over the porches at a huge angle. It's a little higher than I usually do, and so it was a little more difficult. The degree of difficulty was there, but it was a fun project. It wasn't just difficult, it was fun to do.
My name is Luis Pena, and I'm the Historic Preservation Coordinator with the City of Kalamazoo. Unfortunately, no one from the Henderson Castle Foundation was able to join us for filming today, so I'm going to talk about the Historic Preservation Award of Merit that was given to 530 West South Street for stewardship. 530 West South Street, also known as the William Wood Upjohn House, was built in 1878 for a cost of $25,000. Built by prominent local architects and contractors, Bush and Patterson, the property was lived in by the original owner until 1905 when William Upjohn purchased the property. William Upjohn lived in the property until 1968 when he gifted it to the City of Kalamazoo. In 1982, the City of Kalamazoo gave the property to the Red Cross, and it served as the Red Cross's headquarters for the area, along with the neighboring property, 516 West South Street. The property stayed in the hands of the Red Cross until 1999 when it went back into private ownership. The current owners of the property, the Henderson Castle Foundation, purchased the property in 2022 with the intentions of turning the property into a bed and breakfast. Undergoing some maintenance and rehabilitation on the interior was a priority to make the bed and breakfast come true. The Henderson Castle Foundation is being awarded a Historic Preservation Award of Merit for stewardship of the interior of the property.
I'm Tony Sproul.
I'm Kate Sproul, and this is 405 Stewart Avenue in Kalamazoo.
We've been here 5 years now, long-time Kalamazoo residents, but I don't know, both of us over the years, we have day jobs, but we also have passions that we pursue in the arts. Kate's an artist, and I'm a musician. And I don't know, I think we always wanted a house that had some character, and had a house that... it's like a living, breathing entity.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's like a hug.
Yeah, it's like a hug.
This home is like a hug. It's always had great energy.
There's definitely some things that we've gone through in this house that you're astounded that in 130 plus years, no one has touched this or no one has worked on this particular thing. But there are also numerous things in this house over the years that have been taken care of really well, and you know, a lot of the plaster walls are still where they should be, and you know, although there's been a lot of different things that have happened to this house in all of its existence, between a duplex to 4 apartments to a bed and breakfast to us, it's always an adventure, and sometimes we try to do our best to resist that adventure and give it a break, but other times it's hard not to. And
I think you always start with safety things, which is not the most fun and exciting thing in these old places. But then in the last couple of years, we've been able to get along on some things like the kitchen. So we did that all ourselves. We just left the footprint as it is, restored it. We wanted it to be very kind of, you know, cook's kitchen, kind of a Victorian classic. So I refinished all the cabinetry, and then we started on the fireplace. We did these gas lamps, and that was a super fun thing because they were electric and they worked.
They were shorting out.
They were shorting out, and we thought, you know, this is the entry to our home, and it should be beautiful and historic. And he went hunting and found just the thing that was his project.
Yeah. These are from New Orleans, the same company that supplies the French Quarter with their gas lamps.
Yeah.
We've got a big love for New Orleans, and you know, this ended up being the proper thing. So there's always times where we do our projects where we look at each other and say, never again.
We do.
Not, you know.
Yeah, we do a lot of work ourselves.
We do.
And he said, I want these old gas lamps. And I said, that sounds amazing. How do we make that happen? Yep. And he said, well, I'll call the guy. So we called the guy, and the guy said, I can't wait to do this. This sounds so exciting,
Yep.
but I'm not digging that trench.
Yep.
So we said, we'll dig the trench, whatever. So we're out here, always up against the gun because there's always stuff going on here.
And we're busy.
Yeah. So the last day we had to get it done, and it was pouring rain.
Yep.
And so we're out here with, hand tools, digging this trench. We're soaked. We're covered in mud. And I looked at him and I
favorite
was
picture.
like, who came up with this idea? No more ideas for you. We do always enjoy them, so it was definitely worth it. A labor of love, but good. So
Yeah, definitely worth it. Just not in that one moment.
no, just not in that one moment. It was a weak moment.
I think since we started owning the house, I think both of us feel a responsibility, but also like an honor in being able to be part of the lineage of the stewardship of this house. I mean, it's obviously, it's been here since 1890, and to be able to live here and know the history behind it and know that it will stick around far long after we're gone, and just to be able to be a portion of the house's existence is really rewarding.